Hello, online community. I'm Peteria Cochran Routt, the digital minister here at White Bear Lake United Methodist Church. And with me is Jim Roe, a member of our church.
I'm glad to be with you today.
It's December here in Minnesota, and today the sun will set at 4:30 p.m. We are quickly approaching the winter solstice, also known as the longest night of the year. Our church has a tradition of creating a sacred space on the winter solstice called the Service of the Longest Night. This year's service will be on Saturday, December 21st at 5:30 p.m. here in our sanctuary, and it will be a collaboration between Yoga Devotion and our church. While this is an exciting time of year for many people, it can also be a difficult time for people struggling with grief and loss and loneliness. Jim and I were having a conversation on All Saints Day when we were putting away the candles, and we were talking about how grief affects different people in different ways.
Yeah, I found through the experience I had in my life of taking care of my wife Judy for 10 years and being a caregiver, that grief pattern went before death and after death both, and my 3 children experienced it in different ways. Their personalities and their sensitivity and relationship with their mother was different than mine, and the way in which we experienced it and shared about that really enhanced our understanding, not only of what we individually were going through, but also as a family that we were going through. And so I think that it's important for us to realize that a service like this is a place in which we can come and share with other people another experience of transition. You know, taking the notion of the longest night and the solstice as a kind of a symbol of an outer experience of the cosmos and an inner experience that we have as people who have grieved the loss of anything. It could be a loved one, it could be a job, it could be the climate, the government, the experience, whatever the feeling of loss is, this is a place where we might get a glimpse of the way in which hope is alive in the transition, not only from darkness to light in our universe, but from darkness to light in the inner elements of our own life being.
Have you noticed with your children taking different amounts of time as they work through the grief?
Yes.
Is there a standard, or do people grieve for different, some short, some long?
Well, my own experience is that it's a lifelong experience.
Yes.
You know, it is a lifelong. With my kids, I think they when they had to actually be with their mother for a period of time and see what was going on, then it had the double focus of, oh, this is really how bad it is.
Yes.
Plus, how am I going to, assist or help here? My son, all of a sudden, her dementia had Parkinson's as an early part of it.
Okay.
So my son, bought her utensils and things like that for working in the kitchen that had a larger handle that she could handle more easily.
Okay.
So it triggered in him, oh yeah, I can help in some ways. And with my daughter Sarah, our 2 grandkids there, and she said, well, I want to make sure, Grandma has an opportunity to stay in the process with us all, so that my kids even can understand what she's dealing with an illness there's no cure for. And so that they also play an important part in her life. So yeah, I think you're right. I think that's very important to draw people into a sense of what the grief is actually doing within them, and to be able to share that together. So I hope people will come with that in mind, that this can be a time for you to see yourself in a way transitioning through whatever you're going through, and understand the sacred immanence that's involved in that whole experience, that immanence of God within us comes to fruition through the process of our suffering together. I think Viktor Frankl said that most vividly for me being a person who lived as a doctor of psychiatry in the concentration camps, he focused on a future that he had for himself and then made a life for himself afterwards, helping people to see that if you have a vision of a future in the midst of the most terrible times in your life, it will move you into that transition. And so I think this is what a service of devotion for the longest night in the context of a church with yoga and music and everything that invites your body to get involved. The importance of that is that it will help you into that re-understanding your own consciousness. Instead of just, oh, me and I'm having a terrible time, you'll see it in a larger context.
Yes. And I do notice even with myself and my husband right now, we've been talking about how hard it is that it gets dark so early.
Right.
And I do, I'm in it, but I'm not thinking that it's going to get better. But you're right, this vision for the future and taking a moment to think about that it's not always going to be dark at 4:30.
Exactly.
That's right, in a couple of months.
Exactly.
Right, it'll be better. The light will get later and later.
Right. And in the context of, the universe, there's also the context of our spiritual life in a church and our understanding of the divine and the sacred, and understanding that the same God that gave you birth, the same God that brought you through grade school and high school, the same God that has been in your life all along, that same God is here in this moment as well.
Yes.
And that helps you to move into the future with some confidence. So, it's an experience that, for me at least, in coming through all those stages of grief, and that has led me to an appreciation of my wife at a deeper level than I ever expected. The appreciation of the love that we shared, appreciation of my own working through suffering to find something very meaningful in the midst of the things that were tearing your heart out. And so for me, that meaning was that I could then share that experience with other people, and that led me to doing support groups for dementia for close to 10 years after her death. So it can have a real life-giving aspect to it.
Yes. And when my dad died in 2022, he had cancer, and I was able to go and be with my mom and support her for several months.
Yes.
And I found a lot of comfort in taking time out to be grateful.
Yes.
There's so much to be grateful. You don't realize it until you're there, but all the community support, all the people calling, sending cards, bringing food. We felt so much love and so much support from our community that I chose to focus on the gratitude and how thankful I was to have my dad in my life.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that was an important thing for me too. In fact, I believe throughout my whole life, especially now in my mature years, that if you begin everything with gratitude, you'll get to a better place.
Yes.
Because when you start with gratitude, you build resilience within yourself then to look at the really tough things to look at, whatever it is. And if you honestly open yourself to looking at those things, then you begin to try to understand them. Like with me, I never heard of Lewy body dementia. No one else had that I talked to. So I began studying about it and trying to, learn more about it. And I think it's the gratitude that I had for what Judy had done for me that now I needed to do for her that led me into that study, and then beyond that study to say, okay, so where do you go from there then? What is the next step after you've learned these things? And then I began to realize that step leads to a point of seeing myself and what my purpose in life is, and then to, like a seed from a plant flowing in the wind, you just kind of let it go. You ride that wind of yourself into whatever future that takes you to. So to begin with gratitude and then to move through that process, I think is a very healthy thing.
But there is a choice there, right?
Exactly.
Because some people can take something that's very difficult. We all have this in front of us, and go into bad feelings.
Right.
The world is not fair. You know, why am I having to deal with this? But it's there, and I feel like you can choose to go into despair, or you can choose to be grateful.
That's right.
And continue living. It is like, okay, sometimes when things are really bad, you have to decide, okay, am I going to stop living or am I going to continue living?
That's right.
And if I'm going to continue living, then what is that going to look like?
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And there's, you know, all of this is surrounded by mystery. So there's no assurances here or there. And when you start with gratitude, then it does help you focus in those moments. And to realize, you know, that it's pretty human to feel that depression. And in my case, there was more to the depression than I thought. I know that people talk about compounding depression. Well, you know, my dad died when I was in the 4th grade. And then my mother died when she was 85. And in neither of those situations, as a young child, I didn't grieve my dad because I didn't know what the whole process was.
Right.
And in the case of my mom, I was a busy pastor in church with a lot of things going on when that happened. And so I didn't fully grieve either one of those. And then with my wife's death, all of a sudden it was all on the table.
Oh, yes.
And I needed some help from a counselor to begin to look at that.
That's right.
So I think a lot of people go through their life with compounding grief. And in those cases, it is very hard to understand what's going on and to find a road out.
And I'd like to see the stigma of reaching out to a counselor be removed, because that can be so helpful for so many people.
No, it's true. It's true. Every couple that I ever did a wedding service for in our counseling sessions, I would say, you know, this counseling is pre-marriage counseling, but you need to re-engage with counseling on a regular basis.
Right.
Because we all need to see ourselves as the others see us. And when we do that, then we do grow together. But if we don't see each other and we don't communicate well about that, we can drift apart very easily. So, yeah. So I think this is something that not only these worship service experiences do for us, is they create an experience that then we can talk about together. Whether it's a coffee hour on Sunday morning, or just a friend you visit at a different time. Maybe it's on the golf course that the church has, you know, when you're playing golf together. But it opens a door for you to talk about things that are difficult to say. And I think that's very important for us to be able to do, either with a professional person or with one another, as we choose that it's safe to do that. So I think the hopeful things I would say would be that I hope people will come to this service with the understanding that the service itself is a part of the transition that we're going through, and to look upon that with hope, look upon that with a certain amount of gratitude, like you're saying, the fact that the church has this service, the people of this church want to be together. The staff of this church wants to create an environment in which you can come and be a part of this sacred transition.
Well, thank you for sharing with us today, Jim.
You're welcome.
And we hope that you'll come to the service of the longest night here at White Bear Lake United Methodist Church.
Thank you very much for having me here. I look forward to seeing